On this week's show, we're going to break down a few ways that WWE can help improve their WWE Draft and make it more exciting for us, the fans. That's coming to you right now on Wrestling with Fans. What is good, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wrestling with Fans podcast. This is a pro wrestling podcast created by fans for fans from a fan's perspective. My name is Kyle, and this is episode 169. Nice. And today, I'm going to try to give some ideas on ways to fix the WWE Draft, but before I dive into all of that, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. As I am recording this right now, last week's show has done some insane numbers, guys. I have no idea where this came from. But as of right now, as I'm recording this, episode 168, last week's show, has 1,440 downloads. I've never had a show break 1,000, guys. Not even kidding. Previously, it was around 550 was my best episode. The last two episodes have done great numbers. The week before, episode 167 is over 750. And like I said, last week's is at 1,440 right now as I'm recording. And I'm just blown away. Thank you all so much for all the downloads. But what I'd like to do, I got a challenge for everybody who downloads and listens to the show. Go to youtube.com/wrestling with fans and click that subscribe button to keep up to date with our video content over on the YouTube platform. Subscribe, and if you want to, you can click the little bell icon and set your notifications to always, or you can set them to none. I'm just looking for subscribers. If everybody that downloaded last week's show subscribes to the YouTube channel, that'll put us up for monetization. We're just over 100. I think we're still at 103. You need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to be able to unlock that. You need 500 to unlock the community tab. Even if 500 people go over and subscribe, it will be greatly appreciated. It's totally free. It doesn't cost you anything but a few seconds to search Wrestling with Fans podcast on the YouTube app and then click subscribe. Or if you're on desktop, youtube.com/wrestling with fans. Also, you can like us on Facebook as well at Wrestling with Fans. Facebook.com/wrestling with fans, I should say. We're 127, 128 likes over on the book. So again, Hulk smash that like button over on Facebook to keep up to date with all we're doing. You can follow us on Instagram as well. I post some memes and other stuff over there. I also post when streams are going to happen, whenever that is, at Wrestling with Fans over on Instagram. And I'm going to make a TikTok. Jen has gotten me on TikTok, and I've gone down the TikTok rabbit hole and on the Wrestle Talk rabbit hole. And man, I think I could do gangbusters over there with some fun stuff. So be on the lookout for that very, very soon as well. Reach out to us on social media through Facebook, through Instagram. Let us know if there's anything you want to see. Give us some feedback on the show, or you can shoot us an old-fashioned email at wwfshow@gmail.com. All right, guys, without any further ado, in the words of Kenny Omega, let's get into the meat and taters of this week's podcast, and we are talking about the WWE Draft. Last week's episode, I just broke down the draft results, who went where, some potential matchups going along. However, the draft is still pretty fresh in everyone's mind. The effects of the draft, those rosters don't take effect until Friday, October 22nd. So there's still almost 2 full weeks before those new rosters are set. But the draft is always a point of contention amongst the wrestling fans because realistically, it means absolutely nothing. However, all week, I've been thinking of some cool ways that could help make the draft actually mean something and make it worthwhile for us as fans to tune in and get excited about the WWE Draft each and every year if they continue to make this an annual thing as they have over the past few years. There's a lot of people, and I've even had the thought myself, where WWE just gets rid of the draft altogether and even just gets rid of the brand split altogether. If you believe some of the rumor and innuendo on the internet, network executives for both USA Network and Fox want the best and the biggest stars on their show that is on their network. And WWE has to kind of divide and conquer and split up their top stars, their top men, their top women across both brands. So the easiest way they could do it, realistically, is just get rid of the brand split. Try saying that 10 times fast. And I'm sure some of you are doing that right now just to prove me wrong and prove that I am an idiot, and that's okay. I love you guys anyway. But they could easily just get rid of that brand split and just let, back to the way it was years and years ago. And I would be okay with that. They would cut out a lot of the belts. You'd only have really one world champion. They could still keep the Universal Champion and the WWE Championship if they like. They could cut out one of the women's titles. It would be so much easier to do it that way. But WWE is not going to do that. They're going to force this brand warfare, brand supremacy crap down our throats year after year. And since that's what's going to get forced down our throats year after year, here's a few fun ways I think WWE could change up the draft concept to make it more fun for us watching at home. First and foremost, they need to make it feel like an actual draft or like a fantasy football draft. Every, August, even at the end of July, that last month or two before the NFL season starts, fantasy football comes to the forefront of just about anything and everything. So many people love playing fantasy football. And if they treated the draft like an actual fantasy football draft or an actual draft like the NFL draft or the NBA draft or even the NHL or MLB draft or any other sports draft, give it a more authentic feel. Give it a more sports-oriented feel. AEW said early on they were going to give a more sports-like feel, and that's up for debate. That's another talk for another time. But I think if WWE, first and foremost, made it feel like an actual draft, it would automatically be better. And here's some of those ways we can do that. First, make it a standalone event. Do not make it a part of SmackDown. Do not make it a part of Monday Night Raw. Make it a separate standalone event. Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can do this as a network special on Peacock, where, you log on to Peacock or the WWE Network for you international people, and I hate that you all have the network still, and I don't. I hate Peacock. I've said it. I'm going to continue to say it. Peacock sucks. But they could do a special on Peacock, similar to like a pay-per-view. Set it up like an actual draft. Go to an arena or some type of venue where you can set up the big stage with the board, a podium. You can have fans in attendance. You can have some of the superstars sitting in the first few rows. Make it feel like an actual draft. You can have like a little green room where you have some of the prospects, the superstars sitting there hanging out, waiting for their names to be called. Now, if they don't want to do it on Peacock, they could do something else. Make it one night, separate from Raw and SmackDown. Say on like a Wednesday night, since WWE loves to counter-program AEW. Do it on a Wednesday night, a 4-hour special. You do an hour pre-show and the first hour of the draft, say, on USA, and then the second hour of the draft and a post-show over on Fox. Block out a 4-hour block on a Wednesday night, encompassing all of AEW if they really want to get petty. Or, in my case, I'd say Thursday would probably be the best, or even on a weekend. But they could do something like that. But I think the easiest way to do that is have a separate standalone event, a network special on the Peacock network. And by doing that, they should still do like a pre-show. They have the pay-per-view pre-shows with like your Sam Roberts, your Pete Rosenbergs, your Booker T's, Jerry Lawlers, all of that stuff. Have, a special, have the panel, in this special where they kind of sit around, they kind of talk about some of the superstars that can get picked, and they can run hype packages. WWE has the best hype packages of anybody in entertainment. They also have a partnership with Fox, so they could even bring in actual Fox personalities. I don't think USA really does a lot of sports other than with NBC and the Olympics, but they could also use people from the NBC family that do like Sunday Night Football, things like that. I'm not sure what all sports NBC has under them, but I know they do have Sunday Night Football. Fox obviously has the NFL. Bring in some of those personalities, some of their talking heads, to give it a more authentic feel. And then what I'd like to see too is actual representatives for each brand. You have Adam Pearce, you have your Sonya Deville. They could each draft respectively for a brand, Raw and SmackDown. They could even hire actors, have network representatives. Not like the draft 2 years ago where it was like the War Room, and you could tell it was just so fake. Use NXT superstars, give them suits and ties or formal dresses or pantsuits or whatever you want to do. Say that they're like network representatives, and then use your vast array of legends. Bring in legends, bring in like 4 or 5 legends for Raw, 4 or 5 legends for SmackDown, and kind of literally set up that war room that they tried to do 2 years ago, but had it so fake. Have like a draft board, like a whiteboard, like a draft board of who they'd want to get, things like that, and let the legends go out there and make the picks for the respective brands. Give it like this authentic feel. Like in the NFL draft, in the first round, now they've gotten to the point where they bring in fans to do these draft picks. They could even have fans who are in attendance watching this come up on stage and announce a draft pick for a specific brand, especially if they're like a super huge fan of that wrestler and they're wearing their merch. You could do something like that. I think it'll make it a lot of fun. Give it a real authentic feel. But speaking of the superstars, give us a full list of superstars that are eligible, whether they're injured, whether they're currently inactive, and basically they're just paying them to sit home. I want to know who is available to draft, especially if they do one event. They can list every single superstar under WWE contract. Raw, SmackDown, NXT. Give us a full list of people. Even the injured ones. Like there were several people in this past year's draft that didn't get drafted because they're out injured. And what that just means is whenever they're ready to return, they're just going to show up on whichever brand Vince feels they need to go on to create a story or to create an angle, things like that. Now, set it, plan it. Plan what you want to do. And I think another fun thing, kind of keeping with that authentic feel, is use like expansion draft rules. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the NHL just did this recently with the Seattle Kraken. When they bring in an expansion draft, and, to bring in a new team, each team has a protected list, the unable to draft list. They could do that for Raw and SmackDown. Give each brand the ability to protect like 4 singles wrestlers and maybe 1 to 2 tag teams. Not a lot, because you don't want to do too much. Even if it's like 3 or 4 singles and a tag team, have a protected list where no matter what, they cannot be drafted. They are locked to that brand. So like, for example, Roman could have Paul Heyman use his influence and weasel his way to keep himself and the Usos on the protected list for SmackDown. So that way, no matter what, they can't be drafted to Raw. And then you make a big deal about that. Turn that into a storyline that they want to stay on SmackDown. Or they could turn it into the opposite, where Roman demands that they're not on that protected list, and then to make sure that Raw drafts all 3 of them, that Raw drafts the entire bloodline, and make that a running storyline throughout the entire special. Make that a storyline leading up to it. They could have a lot of fun with this. It's not like, when you watch a real draft and you hear about all the trades and the talk behind the scenes, things like that. WWE scripts all this stuff. They could make it whatever they wanted to do. They could weave storylines throughout the entire draft. And the same thing goes for NXT as well. Make a protected list for NXT. Like, for example, Braun Breaker, Bronson Rechsteiner. I wouldn't want to see him on Raw or SmackDown now, but he is probably getting the biggest push of anyone in NXT currently. They have basically turned NXT 2.0, or in my words, NXT 4.0, into the Braun Breaker show, and that's awesome. But put him on a protected list. They could protect Tommaso Ciampa, the current NXT champion. And like, for example, too, Hit Row just got drafted to SmackDown, but Swerve Scott is the current North American champion. Create a rule, no matter what it doesn't matter what it is, about titles. If you switch brands, either the belt stays on that brand or they're able to take the belt with them until they lose it, and they have to go in both. Set the rules. WWE makes the rules. They can make it whatever they want as long as it makes sense. That's all I really, really care about. But I think if they add those type of rules, again, a full list of all the eligible superstars, have like a protected list, like expansion drafts use in professional sports, it could be a lot of fun. It could make it really interesting, especially for like sports fans, for like your NFL, your MLB, your NBA, your NHL fans. They might tune in. If they have some interest in wrestling, you're going to draw in that sports fan that I think WWE has been missing for quite a while. Now, this next point is going to kind of follow up with what I talked about earlier, like, pre-show, the draft pre-show with the panel. It could be the same, men and women, but like when you watch like the NFL draft, ESPN has their panel of experts. Again, you can have the personalities like your Sam Roberts or, legends like your Booker T's. You could have your backstage interviews. I know Renee Paquette did that a lot on WWE. Just have a panel that in between draft picks, they kind of analyze. They could give stats like win-loss records, prospective opponents on the new brand for other wrestlers. Now, you won't be able to do that in the early rounds because there's not going to be a lot of roster. But after a few rounds, they could start, almost fantasy booking some dream opponents when this superstar switches brands or goes to that certain brand. It would be a lot of fun to watch. Just have them, they could, give out their title records, how many championships they've won, how long their reigns have been, their win-loss record, things like that. And WWE can make it up. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to go online and fact check and check all this stuff out to see, if this is actually their record. So they might want to keep it fairly legit, at least, as far as in terms of number-wise. But, they could do anything with it. They can have fun. Again, give it a more authentic, give it a more sports-like feel to draw in those people. And again, another, just kind of piggybacking off of all the previous ones, is model it after like the NFL draft. In my opinion, and I'm sure there's probably some numbers out there to prove it right or wrong, but the NFL draft is arguably the most popular draft in all of professional sports. Now, this is going to go against something that WWE has shied away from in the last 15 years, is in the early rounds, say the first 20 to 30, maybe 20 rounds. So you're looking at like 40 picks, 2 picks each round. Make them a huge deal. Create it like, the lottery picks. Treat your first 5 or 10 rounds like lottery picks. Like, these are the cream of the crop. These are the men and women that are going to be main eventing Raw and SmackDown. These are the men and women that are going to be main eventing your pay-per-views. These are the men and women who could potentially main event like a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam, things like that. Make a big deal about it. Make us believe. It's an easy way by just showing what position they're drafted in, what the next year could hold for the superstars. Now, and the same token, again, this goes against everything WWE stands for, but someone who may be drafted in the 22nd round, like in the 40th picks or so, they're not going to be like your WrestleMania main eventers. They're not going to be headlining pay-per-views. But you still want to, highlight them. If you watch like the NFL draft, like in between picks, even in the latter rounds, they're still analyzing some of these picks. And the picks come pretty fast. So like in the first couple rounds, set a timer, 3 to 5 minutes. That allows your panel in between picks to kind of talk about the pick, give their expert opinion, things like that. Make them feel special. Show highlights of some of their big matches. Show some of the big title wins. Anything to make these people feel special, especially those first few rounds. And then, like, say, after the first 20 or 30 rounds, or you get into, like, the lower mid-cards or comedy acts, things like that, make those picks come every 60, 90, 2 minutes, whatever. They just set the time, however you want to time out the show. Have someone come up, make an announcement. You cut to it briefly. You cut back to the panel where they're just still talking. Then every few minutes they'll catch up on some picks, things like that. It'd be such a cool way because, again, WWE just their production is just second to none. They put together some of the best highlight packages and highlight reels, and they wouldn't even have to do a lot. Like for some of the bigger name superstars, yeah, you want to put more time to maybe like a 3 or 4 minute video package. But for superstars down the line like an Akira Tozawa or something like that, they not only bring him up. No disrespect to Akira Tozawa, but he's basically his role in the company is a comedy wrestler chasing the 24/7 title. They could do like a 60-second or a 90-second, 2 minutes even, whatever. Highlight package of some of the more funny antics chasing the 24/7 title. Because you still make them feel special, even though they may not be, main eventing Raw or a pay-per-view. You still highlight them and make them feel special. Still make them feel important, even though in the grand scheme of things, they're well further down the card than like your Edge or Seth Rollins or Big E, Drew McIntyre, guys like that. So you can still find ways to make them feel special just by doing something like that. Highlight, their positives. But the biggest thing, I still got a few more to go here, but the biggest thing for me, stop doing it in October. Stop doing it a month before Survivor Series. For the past several years, they do these drafts in like the end of September, beginning of October, and then next month in November is Survivor Series, where they are put on their color-coded t-shirts for their respective brands, and they're fighting for brand supremacy. And some of these men and women may have only been on that brand for 4 weeks. They may have been on Raw. Look at someone like Carmella. Let's use Carmella. She is the perfect example in this. In the 2021 draft, she was drafted over to Monday Night Raw. Carmella, since the most recent brand split, has been a SmackDown exclusive superstar. So, say, for example, we get a traditional women's Survivor Series match in a few weeks, or next month, I should say. Why would Carmella care for Raw wins, other than that's the brand that she's on? She's been a SmackDown superstar, has been bleeding blue for years. Hold the draft in May. That is 6 months apart from Survivor Series. And there's a couple reasons why I think May would be the perfect time to do the WWE Draft. First, it allows all of the WrestleMania feuds to continue. Because, WrestleMania takes place at the end of March, first week in April. Then later in April, we usually get Backlash, or this past year, it was WrestleMania Backlash. Whatever that May pay-per-view is. Do it like the Saturday before or the week after. Sometime in May would be a perfect time because it allows all of those feuds that have been culminating all year long to get to end of WrestleMania. So if you have these long-term stories, which I know WWE doesn't do, humor me here for a moment. But if they have this year-long storyline, say, between Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley, which we kind of got. They have a big WrestleMania match. They have a rematch of Backlash. And then it's time for them to move on. So you hold that draft in May. Drew goes to SmackDown. Bobby stays on Raw. And they can both start fresh and build towards their next big opponent at SummerSlam, and then Survivor Series, and then the Rumble, where they can kind of interact in the match. And then WrestleMania, they can have a big blow-off, and then they can go back to the other brand. You keep these superstars away from each other. But do it in May. I think it would be a great time. Again, it's after WrestleMania is over, so all the big hype is over, the rematches are over, and it allows for 6 months for these superstars to build this fake brand loyalty. So when Survivor Series does roll around in November, they've been on that brand for 6 months, and they can want to say, yes, I want my brand to be better. Red versus Blue, which is a great show, by the way. If you don't watch Red versus Blue, I highly recommend it. And if they do it, they can do it on like the Saturday before, the May pay-per-view. And then all the rosters start on Raw on Monday. Kind of like, that Saturday before, like they used to do with takeovers. Hold a big draft, hold it on a Saturday afternoon. Ain't nobody doing nothing on a Saturday afternoon. Unless it's really nice weather out and they might be outside. But still, at least if it's on Peacock, they could go back and watch it after the fact. And then the big blow-off for everything on that May pay-per-view, and then the next night on Raw, everything starts fresh again. That, I think, is the biggest thing that needs to happen. Keep it out of October and move it to sometime in May. I think another fun thing would have trades, either during the draft or throughout the year. Now, get rid of the wild card rule or the superstar or whatever bullshit they come up with. Have actual trades. You can do it during the draft. Say Raw trades the New Day to SmackDown for Shinsuke Nakamura and a pick to be named later. Something like that. Again, it draws in that sports crowd, makes it feel more authentic, more real. And they could even do I'm going to jump ahead in my notes here, but keep the rosters set. Get rid of the wild card rule. If you have Shinsuke Nakamura on Raw, but you want to have him do a one-off with somebody over on SmackDown, like a Baron Corbin, just for example. He's the first name that popped in my head. Have a trade. Have SmackDown trade for Shinsuke Nakamura and send over the Viking Raiders. I don't know. Whatever. Just do something like that. Make it seem more legit. And then set a trade deadline for December 31st. Because then you lock in your rosters for the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And then again, everything starts new in May as you go forward. I've already kind of touched on this, but I'll reiterate it again. You're going to have some type of hierarchy in the draft. Your main eventers are going to go in the early rounds. Your upper mid-card after them. Your mid-card, lower mid-card after them. And then your lower card, your comedy wrestlers, your 24/7 crew after that. And that goes for men and women as well. And the last note I have here, which I think would be pretty cool, actually utilize free agents. Now, I know with this year's draft, they're doing that with the likes of Brock Lesnar, but literally have people either not be eligible or refuse to be put in the draft pool. And there's three names that come to mind, and Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Goldberg are the top three. Now, when Brock Lesnar shows up on SmackDown, he's a free agent in storyline. But if he wants to show up on SmackDown to fight Roman Reigns, then he has to sign a contract to be SmackDown exclusive. But it doesn't have to be long-term. They can say, SmackDown has come to the terms with Brock Lesnar for a 3-month deal. And then you can use, those 3 months to build to a big match with Roman Reigns. Same thing with like a John Cena or a Goldberg. Things like that. Instead of just having them come and go as they please, make the say, we've signed him. It's a short-term deal. They can even say short-term deal. They don't even have to say, it's for like 3 months. They can say short-term. They show up for a month. They show up for like 4 months. It doesn't matter. But make it seem like these guys have signed on to come on. And then, Brock Lesnar does a 3-month program with Roman on SmackDown. He disappears for 2 months and then shows up on Raw 2 months later and does a 3-month program with Big E. And you can say, Brock Lesnar has signed a short-term deal to be a part of the Monday Night Raw roster, and just leave it at that. Like, it's so simple to do. And a lot of these things, yes, it would take time, like doing an actual separate event, but a lot of them is just planning, sticking to the plan, and just these small little changes to make things feel a little more authentic. But what do I know, guys? I'm just a wrestling fan, just like you. Just a few thoughts that I had on the WWE Draft, ways to fix it, make it more entertaining, make it feel more authentic. I think it will be a lot of fun to see something like that. Make it a big annual event. Unlike the drafts we've been getting in recent years where they're just so fake and contrived. People aren't, so many superstars stay on the same brand. I don't know. If it's just my take, let me know what you think. Reach out to us on the Facebook page. DM us over on the Instagram. Now, if you subscribe to us on YouTube, get us to 500 subs to unlock that community tab. We can have discussions on YouTube. But again, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, thank you all so much. I'm, again, just totally blown away and totally humbled by the amount of downloads last week's show has gotten. And even in just the time I've taken to record this, it's 8 more. So it's at 14:48 at the end of this recording. Again, if you have made it this far into the show, you are now obligated to head over to youtube.com/wrestlingwithfans or go in the YouTube app and search Wrestling with Fans Podcast. You'll see the white logo, the brand new logo that I just launched a while back. super click that big red subscribe button. It's totally free. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe on YouTube, guys. It would support the show a lot. Get us to 500. Get us to 1,000. So if you're listening, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Like the Facebook page. Facebook.com/Wrestling with Fans. That's the social medias. Again, reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or if you're into that old-fashioned electronic mail gimmick, shoot us an email, wwfshow@gmail.com. If there's anything you want to talk about, if there's any topics you would like to hear covered, I've got a couple watch-alongs that I'm super far behind, and I apologize to Superfan Nick, who requested one a while back. I really have to get to it. A couple other quick house cleaning things. As you guys know, if you've listened to the show a while, I'm a huge Survivor fan. Survivor 41 is back. And every time when Survivor comes up, I always want to do a fantasy Survivor season. So I have cast not one, but 2 wrestling fantasy Survivor. Notice I didn't say WWE because I have a WWE version of Blood versus Water, and I'm not sure what season I'm going to go off of just yet, but I have a tentative cast for an AEW themed fantasy Survivor episode. So I'm going to sit down, start taking some notes, start squaring both of those away, and get to recording. They may be just me. I've reached out to Bobby. He's very busy, like I am and like we all are. So we're going to try to come together. Maybe I can get him on board. His wife is a huge Survivor fan, and Jen, of course, is a huge Survivor fan with me. I've got her hooked on the show. So you might see some special guests in those special episodes, or you might just hear my wonderful voice talking out some fantasy wrestling Survivor. So be on the lookout for that coming soon. Don't forget, brand new YouTube videos every single Sunday. Brand new audio shows every single Monday morning, unless otherwise noted. The last couple weeks have some off days, just because of the events going on. 2 weeks ago I reviewed Not So Extreme Rules, and this past week the show came out on Tuesday. So in 5 days it's on almost 1,500 downloads. I'm blown away again, guys. Thank you all so much. But that's going to do it. I'm going to end the show here. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you next time right here on Wrestling with Fans.